Hello, Bygone Geek universe, and welcome to your weekly dose of nostalgia. Step away from the stress of today and join me back in 1997. It's your time traveler's guide to this very moment, just way back when. All right, folks, we're taking quite a jump from last week's episode. That was this moment in 1990 to now, this moment in 1997. I know for me, I was 5 in the 1990 episode, so some of it was a little bit of a spotty memory. Some of it I vividly remember, but now, jumping to 1997, I was 12 years old, and so many of these movie theater movies we're going to talk about, the top hits of that moment in 1997, news from that era, the TV show lineup, like your home video of what you would have rented at Blockbuster in 1997 at this very moment. I'm just so excited about it. So let's go ahead and jump right into the very first segment we're going to do is what you would have seen on the marquee at the movie theater in 1997. So let's go.
Coming soon to a theater near you.
All right, folks, 1997 at this very moment had quite a lineup of movie theater movies. It's so funny going through all of these every single week because you're like, it almost seems like they're made up. It's almost too nostalgic. It's like too good to be true. It's too sweet of nostalgia. So yeah, we're going to kick this off that the top 5 movies that would have been in your theater right now at this very moment in 1997. We're going to start right off with Air Force One.
You know who I am? I'm the President of the United States.
Get off my plane. Oh, man. I'll tell you right now, this movie, you take Indiana Jones, you make him the President of the United States, you put him on Air Force One and pit him against Gary Oldman as this like Russian terrorist. Oh, my goodness. It was such a late 90s sort of action film, but this is for people who have not seen Air Force One. I don't know who you are, but this movie I feel like is a sleeper classic for Harrison Ford. I think it's so easy to see him as Han Solo, so easy to see him as Indiana Jones, but I'll tell you right now, man, he to me, right up there with Bill Pullman in Independence Day with best president in cinematic history. I'll tell you right now, Harrison Ford as the president in Air Force One is so freaking good. And I don't get political on this show, but I'm going to tell you right now, 2024, I'm voting for Harrison Ford for our president. I think he can pull us through. I totally think he can.
Fact. Not truth.
So another great movie that we have from this era is quite a pivot. We have George of the Jungle. George of the Jungle, strong as he can be. Man, oh man, I watched George of the Jungle so much when I was young at this age. Brendan Fraser was just, I had already seen him in Encino Man because I just loved Pauly Shore movies, and to see Pauly Shore and Brendan Fraser together and Sean Astin like in a high school setting, it was, I don't know, it was so cool. So then when he started kind of rolling out these other movies, like George of the Jungle was this all-encompassing family film. Like I remember renting this and watching it with my family and just enjoying every minute of it. There was comedy for everybody. There was comedy for me as a 12-year-old in 1997, and there was comedy for my dad and my mom. It was just a good, wholesome family film. There's part of me that would kind of like to see with the resurgence of Brendan Fraser. I would like to actually see a sequel to George of the Jungle. So here's another one that's quite a big pivot from this lineup, but it's the movie Contact.
If this is a chance to find out even just a little part of that answer, I don't know. I think it's worth a human life.
I feel like in that era and even in present day, you put Jodie Foster in any film, she's going to just absolutely kill it. This movie, I feel like might have set a precedent for me as a young 12-year-old kid when it came out that started this kind of resurgence that every time there was a space or alien or whatever, you combine those together in any movie, I wanted to watch it so bad. And Contact had this cool storyline to it that was very mysterious, but also scientific and dramatic. And it was a pretty intense movie at times. And I kind of feel like it was a little bit of ahead of its time too. And weirdly, when I go back and watch this, I totally forgot that Matthew McConaughey is in this, which is weird considering I adore Contact with Jodie Foster, but I also adore Interstellar with Matthew McConaughey. But he was completely pointless. I feel like in the movie Contact, there was nothing but Jodie Foster in this movie. And the storyline was just so cool and so wholesome and mysterious. Contact was quite an amazing film. So here's another movie that we have that is also right in line with Contact, but the complete opposite tone of Contact. At this point in 1997, on your theater marquee would have been none other than Men in Black.
Men in Black, protecting the Earth from the scum of the universe.
Men in Black was an absolute blockbuster. I feel like for anybody who was around in 1997, especially if you were a kid, but even a teenager or an adult, Men in Black had this appeal factor that you had Tommy Lee Jones and you had Will Smith. Who would have thought that combining them together would have been such amazing chemistry? But Men in Black, I feel like just took the world by storm in 1997. And it's no wonder this franchise has been going on for so long. But I remember vividly seeing Men in Black at this time in 1997. And it was just an absolutely jaw-dropping, groundbreaking movie for me to see as a 12-year-old kid. I mean, did you see Men in Black at this age? I bet you a lot of you did. So the final movie that we actually have here that would have been one of the movies in 1997 on your marquee at the theater is quite a bit of a pivot. It's none other than the John Woo action classic Face Off.
Plan B, let's just kill each other.
So I'm ending the lineup of these 5 theater movies from 1997 with this action classic Face Off for a very good reason. This is my top choice. I feel like the movie Face Off came out at the exact right time, with the exact right director, with the exact right leading men. I mean, John Travolta and Nic Cage in this movie, I feel like they don't get the credit that they deserve. The idea that you have to play this hero and this villain, but then you flip-flop, like you swap, you face off, like, and you have to play 2 roles in this movie. John Travolta was so convincing as this sweet, wholesome dad that lost his son. But then when he pivoted to being the villain, to go from Sean Archer to Castor Troy, he was absolutely frightening. And then I feel like Nic Cage to go from this horrifying Castor Troy character to then this wholesome dad. Like, you got to see this hard and soft side of both of these amazing actors. And then just the over-the-top action of John Woo. I mean, he's an icon when it comes to especially that era of action. It was just absolutely a mind-blowing movie, especially for a 12-year-old kid in 1997. So like I've done in previous weeks, my top choice, I look up facts to kind of dig deeper into the movie choice that I have. In the movie Face Off, John Travolta and Nic Cage weren't the original leading men for this movie. It was actually in early development. They really thought that this movie would be Arnold Schwarzenegger and Sylvester Stallone. I can tell you right now, this movie would be an insanely different film if you had Arnold and Sly side by side in this movie. And no offense to these guys who are legends of nostalgia to me. I don't like to speak ill of either of these fellas. They are just like, they're set in stone for me. Nobody can knock them down. But the tone of this movie, I feel like couldn't have been done with Schwarzenegger and Sly. There's just no way. I feel like they couldn't have done that sort of back and forth of being a good guy one second and a bad guy the next second. It would have had to have been this kind of bombastic, over the top, kind of campy at times version of Face Off, I feel like, with those two. But with Nic Cage and John Travolta, I feel like they had and still have the acting chops to be able to pull off multiple characters in a movie and convincingly make you think that this is John Travolta in Nic Cage's body with a face swapped out. Like it was perfect in every way. But Arnold and Sylvester, I'm sorry guys, this movie wouldn't have been the same. Shut up! Out of all of these movies in 1997, what would you have actually picked? Looking at that marquee in 1997, you would have had Men in Black, Face Off, Contact, George of the Jungle, and Air Force One. What would you pick? I know that this is a tough call because all of these are iconic. All of these have very amazing actors and performers in them. So it's a very, very difficult decision. So we're just going to keep this, rolling. And the very next thing that we're going to do is the music you would have been tapping your toe to, or listening on your Walkman, or listening on your CD player. I think 97, yeah, you could add a CD player. So yeah, what would have been in your CD player in 1997? So here we go.
Number 1. Hello again, everybody, and welcome to Casey's Top 40.
All right, folks, I picked out 3 of the top songs from this moment in 1997, just because I feel like they're so wildly different from each other. And it just goes to show in that era, the different, wildly different types of music artists that there were in 1997. So the very first one that we're gonna do here is "Quit Playing Games with My Heart" by Backstreet Boys.
Baby, quit playing games with my heart.
I don't know about you guys, but in this era in 1997, I was 12 years old. So Backstreet Boys and NSYNC and all of the different boy bands were just played so much in middle school dances, in slow dances. And it was so cheesy, but I vividly remember a lot of the different girls I dated, because there were just so many back in the day. I was quite a catch. I just remember girlfriends actually being linked to whatever that cheesy slow dance song was in that particular era. And so, yeah, a lot of them were linked to Backstreet Boys. "Quit Playing Games with My Heart" was definitely a classic song from this era. So another one that we have here that was absolutely massive at the time, just everybody was singing this song, was MMMBop by Hanson. It's really funny if you actually go back now and watch the original MMMBop Hanson music video. They are tiny children, especially the drummer. I can't remember all their names. I think there's like an Isaac and maybe a Taylor. There's something there, it's the stereotypical names, I feel like, of that era. But that young drummer, he looked like he was maybe in elementary school. Like, it is so crazy when you think of how big Hanson was in that era and how young they were. I think in 97, I read something that the oldest brother that was in Hanson was only 17 years old. So all 3 of them were minors, and yet they have the biggest song of that era. MMMBop was just so massive in this time in 1997. And I do remember my sister having plenty of Tiger Beat and Teen Bop magazine centerfolds of these 3 guys from Hanson. I mean, they were just cool, blonde-haired, long-haired surfer dudes. And so to this like average schmo who was 12 years old living in the Midwest in Ohio, they looked so cool to me. So at this moment in 1997, the top song was "I'll Be Missing You" by Puff Daddy featuring Faith Evans.
I know you're still living your life after death.
So I'll be honest with you, I completely forgot about this iteration of this song until I researched this episode. And the second it came on, I was like, yep, I remember that school dance that particular year in 1997, that this was a slow dance. This was so just, I mean, it's from a classic song. And for them to kind of remix it in this way to bring it more into the fold in 1997, it's no wonder that it was the #1 song at this moment in 1997. And I also had to look at whether or not he was truly Puff Daddy at this time, or if he was P. Diddy or Puff or what, all the different iterations. I know I sound super old trying to say those different things, but I mean, he's gone through so many different naming renditions. But "I'll Be Missing You" definitely was a classic, and it is forever locked in my nostalgic brain from this era in 1997. So yeah, like that's quite a mix of the 3 different songs. A lot of different genres. So the next thing we're going to pivot into is again, like just like the last episode for 1990, is what you would have been watching on your television in 1997 at this very moment. So here we go.
Stay tuned for a whole new season of TGIF.
So on Friday nights on ABC, at this very moment in 1997, you could watch back-to-back, Step by Step, Boy Meets World, Sabrina the Teenage Witch, and Clueless. Again, what an awesome lineup. I know for me, out of that lineup, my top one, my favorite would be Step by Step. Step by step, day by day. So in 1997, at this very moment, you could also switch to CBS on Saturday nights and watch back-to-back Dr. Quinn, Medicine Woman, Early Edition, and Walker, Texas Ranger. So what a crazy range of nostalgia on just one channel at that time to be able to watch Dr. Quinn, Medicine Woman. And then you watch a futuristic time travel newspaper show called Early Edition. And then you get the action of Chuck Norris on Walker, Texas Ranger. I watched Walker, Texas Ranger religiously as a kid. I feel like my grandpa liked Chuck Norris, my dad liked Chuck Norris, my mom, my sister, we all, who didn't love Chuck Norris in this era in 1997, or for all of the 90s for that matter. But Walker, Texas Ranger was one heck of a show. Yes, it was cheesy, but it was absolutely the right show at the right time with the right leading man. The eyes of a ranger are upon you. Anything you do, they're gonna see. When you're in Texas, look behind you, 'cause that's where the ranger's gonna be. What a cheesy theme song, but I loved it and watched it religiously, apparently every Saturday night on CBS in 1997. Now I know the exact era that I was glued to my television watching Walker, Texas Ranger. Thanks, Chuck. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Chuck Norris.
So what was the news that you would be seeing at this moment in 1997? So let's transition into that.
That's how it is for this Wednesday night. I'm Tom Brokaw. I'll see you tomorrow night from Mount St. Helens.
So one of the big headlines at this very moment in 1997 was that America's very first rover touched down on the Red Planet. The Pathfinder mission successfully launched the Sojourner rover onto the Mars surface. The Pathfinder rover's name was selected from a nationwide contest won by Valerie Ambrose, who was 12 at the time. Her winning essay discussed the importance of abolitionist Sojourner truth. Man, could you imagine being a 12-year-old kid in 1997? Because I was 12, and I love space in this era. I mean, to be able to write an essay, and it is forever named the first rover that went to the lunar or to the Martian surface, is from your suggestion for the name. That is such a cool thing. I actually did a little bit of research, and the essay winner, Valerie Ambrose, is now a real estate agent in Connecticut. So another huge news story at this time in 1997 was the Nevada State Commission revoked Mike Tyson's boxing license and fined him $3 million for biting opponent Evander Holyfield's ear. I don't know about you guys, but even at the age of 12, I knew this news story at this very moment in 1997. It was all that, I mean, I kind of feel like it might have overshadowed the Pathfinder rover. I really do, because if we know anything, Mike Tyson is a little unpredictable, but I know now in recent years, he's got a cool podcast. I think it's called Hot Boxing with Mike. And he's very mellow now. I still wouldn't mess with him, but he's much more mellower. So I don't think he's biting too many ears in 2023. So yeah, those are your news headlines for this very moment in 1997. Let's go ahead and pivot into our final category of what would you have rented? What would you have seen on the shelves at your local video store, at Blockbuster Video? And what would you have had to have picked from in this era in 1997? So here we go.
Come discover the Blockbuster difference.
So here's another hard to believe lineup, folks. But at this very moment in 1997, on your video rental shelf would have been the likes of Beverly Hills Ninja, Bad Boys, Matilda, Jungle to Jungle, and Private Parts. that is such a wild lineup at this time in history. I mean, there are so many different ones to pick from here, and I kind of have stories for each one of them before I reveal what my top choice would be. But I'll give you one right now. The movie Private Parts with Howard Stern. I was 12 years old, and I do remember, I think I was at a friend's house that I saw this, and definitely too young to see it. But it just, I felt, I don't know, when you're like 12, 13 years old as a little boy, like you get into some mischievous things, especially in the 90s. It's just like, yeah, there's just a lot of different things. And when I watch this movie, and I can't remember my friend's house, I don't know if I'm blocking it out because I don't want to be a snitch or if I truly can't remember, but Private Parts was far too adult for me. But I mean, it was, I don't know. I think it came at a time in my young childhood that parts of it, the private parts of it, made me a man.
The underpants are coming off. That is the first naked lady in the history of radio.
But another one here that is quite a pivot, because you go from Howard Stern to a Disney movie, is Jungle to Jungle. I don't know if you guys remember this movie, but it had Tim Allen in it. And I don't remember the kid's name, but he's been in a couple different things in recent day. But it was Tim Allen who had a kid that he didn't know that somehow was raised in a jungle, because I think his mom was like connected to this like tribal sort of anthropology sort of based thing. And he doesn't find out, Tim Allen doesn't find out he has this kid until he's like 13 or 14. He might even be like 12, because this was a very relatable movie to me in 1997, because I feel like I was a similar age to this kid who was raised in the jungle. But it kind of really was like a George of the Jungle style movie, except for Tim Allen, Tim the Toolman Taylor, was coming to the jungle to discover that this long lost son that he didn't know about. And then he, of course, brings him to the city, and he has a pet tarantula, and all these shenanigans ensue. But it was just a wholesome family sort of movie in an era where Tim Allen was huge.
Go to the village, save yourself.
And then another great kids movie was Matilda. Matilda is this sweet, wholesome movie.
I'm smart, you're dumb.
I'm big and you're small.
I'm right
and you're wrong.
Miss Trenchbull was one of the most horrifying villains to me as a young kid. I mean, she just was so gross, and she was so intense, and she just abused children, and nobody did anything about it. But Matilda was definitely a classic for me in this era in 1997.
No more Miss Nice Girl.
And then you pivot to Bad Boys. Bad Boys, interestingly enough, I did not see Bad Boys in 1997. I feel like as much as I watch action movies, it was more action martial arts and things like that. Even though I had like Lethal Weapons in there and stuff like that, I don't know how I missed Bad Boys, because I saw Bad Boys 2 first many years later, and then saw Bad Boys 1 probably in the early 2000s. But it's a classic movie. I would have loved it in 1997, but yeah, Bad Boys. It's quite a mix in here, and then the final one that I have that obviously I saved the best for last. This is my choice from these 5 movies in 1997. What I would have pulled off the shelf, and I would have taken up to that clerk and went home and watched with my family and enjoyed every second of, was Beverly Hills Ninja.
Ah, you are observant as well as beautiful.
Beverly Hills Ninja, to me, is Chris Farley's top movie. I mean, I know that that's a bold statement considering Tommy Boy, Black Sheep. I mean, he's just, the brief time that we got him in this era was just, he was amazing. He was so funny. He was so relatable. Like, I was a chubby kid. I feel like everybody in my family, we've always kind of been bigger guys. And so to see Chris Farley as a leading man on the television was just so relatable and so cool to me. He was just, I don't know. I saw myself on the screen, which was very cool to a young kid. So as my top home video pick, I actually dug around on the internet to find any sort of like deep cut facts about Beverly Hills Ninja. And this one is absolutely insane. And I went down quite a rabbit hole to confirm whether or not it's true. And I promise you it's true. I went to school for journalism and mass communication, so I'm not going to lie to you about this. This is true. You can find this online yourself. But the coolest movie fact about Beverly Hills Ninja is actually very hard to believe. I bet you didn't know that Christian Bale, the Dark Knight himself, has proclaimed that his favorite comedy movie of all time is Beverly Hills Ninja, starring Chris Farley.
Lesson number 2. Your foe's back can quickly become his front.
Man, oh man, did I already love this movie from a child in 1997? But even more so now, to know that Christian Bale, my favorite Batman of all time, also adores this movie and thinks that it's hilarious and just enjoys it. I enjoy it too. And I think it's just a lot of people also enjoy this movie. And it's kind of sad because Chris Farley reportedly at the time he thought this was his worst movie. I don't know why. I don't quite understand why, because he was relatable to me. Like I said, I was an overweight kid. I liked seeing that type of hero on the screen. So I adored this movie, and I love that Christian Bale loves this movie. And I just wish that Chris Farley would have also loved this movie. I feel like if he was still around, he would have quickly seen as time went on that this movie became a little bit of a cult classic. That it's right up there with Tommy Boy. It's right up there with Black Sheep. It's just a great movie. And I mean, Farley, you knocked it out of the park, man. You really, really did. You were relatable to me, and I appreciate that. I appreciate that very, very much. And I will enjoy this movie with Christian Bale for all time. It'll be a piece of my nostalgic heart for always. Yeah.
We're sending you back to the future.
So thank you for tuning in to another week of Bygone Geek. And until the next time you see us or hear us, be sure to live your life with just a little bit of whimsy. We'll see you guys next week.